the only Marvel character that was rejected immediately after its creation, but became one of the most famous and popular characters of all time after its first appearance in comics. Created by Stan Lee, who gave the character some key points like being a teenager and having personal problems, and also having a weird name. But at that time, everyone thought that a superhero is a mature person and has no personal problems. But Spider Man proved it wrong and quickly made a place between Marvel's superheroes. Till now, there are 8 Spider-Man solo movies, and 3 characters have played Spider-Man on big screen. The first Spider-Man movie was released in 2002, directed by Sam Raimi, which was a super duper hit at that time. And even Marvel fans didn't notice some details that slipped right in front of their eyes. Today we are going to tell you some points about Spider-Man directed by Sam Raimi that you literally missed. All 3 actors played a different Spider-Man, and the origin stories were totally different. That is because the Sam Raimi Spider-Man belonged to the Earth 96283. Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man belongs from Earth 120703, and Tom Holland's Spider-Man belonged to the Earth 199999, which is the Earth from which all the superheroes of MCU belong today. Sam Raimi was not the first choice to direct Spider-Man. Many other directors like Ang Lee, M. Night Shyamalan, Roland Emmerich, and David Fincher. Fincher nearly did make the movie, but he wanted to focus on Gwen Stacy's death rather than an origin story, so the studio went a different direction. We all know that Deadpool is the only character who breaks the fourth wall during the movies and comics, but in Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker narrated the movie at the beginning.
Who am I? You sure you want to know? The story of my life is not for the faint of heart.
Hence breaking the fourth wall. Most of the background signs and places names are made up, exclusively for the film. One of the major exceptions, however, is Peter's high school, Midtown High, comes directly from comic book Peter's teenage years.
Midtown High seniors. No wandering.
The first Spider-Man movie literally gave us a cameo of Miles Morales. One of the most iconic and unique spider abilities, the power of camouflage himself with his surroundings, is actually discussed.
Some spiders change colors to blend into their environment. It's a defense mechanism.
You know, spiders can change their color to blend into their environment. Yeah, it's a defense mechanism. Yeah.
Can Spider-Man turn invisible?
Not in my universe. That's incredible. Some kind of fight or flight thing.
What's that?
And typically, in almost every comic, Oscorp is headquartered in a sleek skyscraper similar to the Avengers Tower. But here, Oscorp is shown as a giant factory, which is unique compared to every other Spider-Man movie. Norman Osborn was almost not in the movie. The original draft of the script made use of Electro and Sandman as the main villains, but Sandman was eventually incorporated into Spider-Man 3, and Electro would have to wait until the second Andrew Garfield's movie to make his big screen debut. The scene where Peter catches MJ and her lunch in the cafeteria is not CGI. Shockingly, it took 156 takes to make that shot.
Wow.
Well, the concept of Peter's organic web shooters was actually James Cameron's idea, because James Cameron himself said the greatest superhero movie he never made. In the movie, the character Flash Thompson is played by unrecognizable Joe Manganiello, a name you'll recognize from things like True Blood, Magic Mike, and recently casted as DCU's Deathstroke. Peter tries out a handful of familiar superhero catchphrases when trying to make his web shooting work on purpose for the first time. The catchphrases he uses are all from DC Comics, including Superman's
Up and away, Web!
and DC's Captain Marvel.
Shazam!
One of Peter's costume sketches is actually a reference to an obscure Marvel hero called the Stingray. He was introduced back in 1967. Sometimes he works with Namor. He wears an exosuit that allows him to work underwater. That's pretty much it. Everyone knows Randy Savage. In the movie, the iconic character wrestler Bonesaw McGraw was invented specifically for the movie. In the comic, Peter faces off against a wrestler named Crusher Hogan, but in the movie, it was changed. In the first movie, Bruce Campbell is seen as a ring announcer for Peter's match.
The Amazing Spider-Man!
There are some familiar faces in the movie, not at that time, but now. Octavia Spencer from The Shape of Water, Hidden Figures, plays the woman who registers Peter for the wrestling competition.
There's no featherweight division here, small fry.
Quest Aerospace was specifically created as Oscorp's competitor.
The General gave the go-ahead to Quest Aerospace to build a prototype of their exoskeleton design.
But surprisingly never made into Marvel Comics, even after the movie broke box office records. Talking about some familiar faces, Xena herself was in the movie. Lucy Lawless shows up during the talking head interviews as Punk Girl, who thinks Spider-Man has 8 hands.
Guy with 8 hands. Sounds hot.
Before Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, where Eddie Brock was properly introduced. In the first part, where J. Jonah Jameson's subordinate explains that
we don't have a decent picture. Eddie's been on it for weeks. We can barely get a glimpse of him.
this was a reference to Eddie Brock, who later became Venom in Spider-Man 3. In Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies, Ned Leeds does not exist in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, but his wife, Betsy Brandt, does. In her comic book accurate role as Daily Bugle reporter, played by pre-breakout Elizabeth Banks. One of the most iconic scenes that became hilariously fail, where Spider-Man saves MJ and swings away. Mary Jane's hair blows back from her face as if they were swinging from right to left, but the Spider-Man was swinging from left to right. She was also very clearly holding on to a mannequin, a Spider-Man mannequin. But because it was 2002, so we can easily forgive this mistake. Before Willem Dafoe was offered the role of Green Goblin, Bill Paxton, Mel Gibson, Nicolas Cage, Charlie Sheen, John Travolta and John Malkovich were considered to play the role. Thank God Willem Dafoe played the role. But for a second, seriously, who can play a role better than Willem Dafoe? There was a very little cameo of Marvel's another character. Fin Fang Foom's head can easily be seen in Osborn's household, which was one of Marvel's weirder villains, a giant green dragon. The scene in which Spider-Man is forced to choose between saving MJ and saving a cable car full of children was adapted one of Peter's most famous fights with Green Goblin in the comics. In the comics version, however, the scene on the bridge is done with Gwen Stacy and ultimately results in her death. The scene was changed in the movie because of the story requirements, and also no one wanted to see MJ die in the very first part of Spider-Man. Also, Norman being impaled by the spikes on his own glider is taken directly from Norman's first death in the comics in Amazing Spider-Man 122. Norman definitely did die in the movie, but he was resurrected several times in the comics. So guys, these were some points. If you're a Marvel fan, you can also share this video with your friends. If you like this video, do give a thumbs up. Till next video, take care.